Good afternoon and welcome to a quick update on the restoration of this 1950 Chris Craft Riviera 20. Today I've come down to take this video just to show that we've obviously well on our way with our 5200 bottom. In the last 2 weeks we've spent the time and picked off all the bottom of this boat, getting it ready for the 5200. This boat has been in storage since 1991, and obviously very dry to work with. It's been quite good. So as we work around the boat, you can see that obviously before we did the work on the bottom, the transom was removed. It had a series of rot in both the corners in the planks, and so we've removed the transom and got timber underway for that. It'll include new white oak frames to the top transom bow, but both corners. So all the planks have come off. This is the starboard side, of course, looking upside down. So the starboard side planks are here, and then of course we've got the port side planks over here. So we've pulled off the planks, we've pulled off the thin scamping planks underneath. They'll be discarded, and also we've removed this chine bead that runs through this part of the boat. That'll be replaced as we build up. It was quite damaged on the corners, obviously from getting boated and against the trailers and against beaches and wharfs and what's and pieces. So the boat is all ready. A summary of work that we're going to do. So we're going to remove all these corner blocks and bed these back in some 5200. This centre stiffening block is going to be removed and replaced in its entirety and bedded in completely. We're going to Dutchman and a repair through this part of the boat where it's just been knocked around a little bit, and of course we've got new transom frames and supports to go in there as well, so that'll be come together. This is a bit of a weak point on these boats, and we're going to actually put a plate in here, rebaited in and bolted through, just to give a bit more strength, because these are just screwed through and they are just simply a bit weak and they all flex about there. On this corner here, once again, we're going to remove this corner block and 5200 that in, and then from there working forward, both these the first 3 aft intermediate frames are all split across the boat here, and so these 3 frames, this one here, this one here, and this one here that sits at the forward of the engine bay, are all going to be replaced both sides. They just have taken a bit of a beating, and obviously without the support. And of course this one here, if we look real close, the saw didn't quite match in the factory, and that one has had a bit of a packer put in. There's one up the forward as well. So other than that, the frames are not too bad. There's a bit of oil in some of this timber work, but I think we're going to be able to work around that without sort of chucking it all out. So all the frames are okay up through here. There's a bit of splitting going on in this forward frame just through here. Fastenings are just not quite rightly placed, and so this piece of frame section we're going to place out, and then we're going to put a Dutchman repair in here where this piece has just not quite weathered as well. So this has had a bit of a beating, but we don't want to replace it. We're trying to keep as much timber as we can, but we will Dutchman a repair into this section here just to tidy that up, probably mitre that in and scarf that in there. So all in all, it's not too bad. It's certainly much better than I thought, and it's just the opportunity just to tidy them up, put as much penetrating epoxy in here as we can, sand them back, put as much penetrating epoxy, and then paint them out before we move forward. And of course you can see the red paint. At some point this boat's had enamel placed in it, which is not quite ideal, and obviously you've got to be repaired. But here's a good example of this intermediate frame which has been poorly fixed, and is about to be, we'll remove that and fix it up with a new intermediate frame, both sides in this engine bay. But in reality the chines are really tight to the frames, which is a good positive move, and obviously it had a little bit of sealant in between the planks, but not a lot of sealant, and certainly not enough to make a big difference. So this is pretty tight through here, and we're just going to tidy this up and leave this as best we can. Just try and just deal with what we've got rather than sort of replace everything. So as we move forward on this side, once again, pretty dry, pretty good. This steering block, I might have mentioned in a previous video, these were, you know, just not bolted together sufficiently to take the weight of that steering mechanism on them. So we will bolt that together properly and tie it up. You can see it's got some cannon. It's just nowhere near good enough. So all in all, we're really pleased to be at this point. I must say that removing the screws out of this bottom of the boat, I come down here on Sunday and I had half of one side to do, and I hated it from the first time I touched it, and I just stayed down here and did it until it was complete. And this is definitely one of those jobs that you just have to get into and get going and just look to the end goal, because it's monotonous work and it's pretty boring and pretty taxing on your right arm if you're a bit right-handed. So this container down here shows all the, this is actually about 2/3 of all the screws that we've pulled out of the bottom of this boat. So there's a few to go back in, but hopefully a little bit easier getting back in than getting out. So we've got a bit of work to do, lots of cleaning and sanding and prep work, some timber replacement. Not going to worry too much about the clean up in here until we got all that done, but in reality we're going to try and do as much prep work on the sides, the sanding, the removal of this insistent red paint. We're going to do all this work now before we move forward. So the paint for this boat is just not available in New Zealand, the single pot polyurethane, and I really want the interior of this boat to be period 100%. So I've got some paint getting freighted in out of the States at a cost that is a bit eye-watering, I must confess, but we want this part of the boat to be dead right. So I've elected that it's such an important part of the boat to have the inside painted correctly. So lots of woodwork repair, lots of Dutchman repairs, lots of sanding, and then some good epoxy, penetrating epoxy, and then obviously a bit of paint on top of that. So just an update on where we're at with the restoration of this 1950 Chris Craft Riviera 20 here in Hamilton, New Zealand. We'll talk later.